On May 8, 2024, a man paddling a kayak through the northern canals of Cape Coral, Florida, looked down into the dark water and saw something that did not belong there. A human skull. He had no way of knowing that the answer to whose it was would take 2 more years to find. And he had no way of knowing that when the answer finally came, it would not bring closure. It would open a murder investigation that had been waiting 40 years. The skull belonged to a woman who vanished without a trace in 1985. Her name was Rose Marie Gayhart. She was 23 years old, and for 4 decades no one knew what had happened to her. But what if I told you that identifying her was never the hard part? The hard part was what came after. Because the moment the DNA came back, the question stopped being, "Where is Rose?" and became, "Who killed her?" Rose Marie Gayhart grew up in Dansville, a small town in upstate New York. On Christmas Eve, 1984, she made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She left the snow behind and moved south to Cape Coral, Florida, with her boyfriend, a man named Robert Paddock. She was chasing a new start, a warm winter, a future. 3 months later, she was gone. The new start was not what it looked like. Rose moved in with Paddock and his mother. It did not take long for the cracks to show. A neighbor later told investigators the trailer was filled with arguments, with a lot of arguing and a lot of crashing, as far as things being destroyed. And Rose carried a secret. She was pregnant. She wanted to keep the baby. Her boyfriend did not. Rose had just started a new job at a hot dog stand in Cape Coral. On the day she vanished, she clocked out and walked toward the parking lot. She never came home. When Paddock went to pick her up, she wasn't there. Restaurant staff told police she'd left with a man in a red pickup truck, and 2 independent witnesses said they had seen her with a white man in that same red truck. She was walking with a suitcase. She had been kicked out of the trailer, and she was never seen again. Back in Dansville, her parents waited. Rose had written letters. She had called, and then, suddenly, the letters and the calls stopped. Her parents knew something was wrong. They reported her missing in March of 1985, and then they waited. For years, for decades. Her mother and father grew old. They battled cancer. They never got an answer. Then, on May 8, 2024, 39 years after Rose vanished, a kayaker paddling the northern canals of Cape Coral made a discovery that would break the silence: a human skull. Police returned with excavators, with earth movers, with forensic teams sifting the soil. They found more skeletal remains. The bones had been there for decades, since around the time Rose disappeared. It took 2 years. But in 2026, the DNA finally came back. The remains were identified as Rose Marie Gayhart. 40 years after she disappeared, she had a name again. And that is where most stories would end. A family with closure, a case closed. But this story does not end there. Because the moment Rose was identified, the Cape Coral police did something unexpected. They did not close the file. They opened a homicide investigation. Chief Anthony Sizemore announced that investigators had identified 2 people of interest. The first was the man Rose had followed to Florida, Robert Paddock. Police say he had a history of abuse and that his mother did not like Rose. He has denied involvement, but investigators say he has made, in the chief's own words, some pretty bizarre statements over the decades. The second person of interest is where this story takes its darkest turn. His name was Roland Davis. He was a serial killer. He is dead now. But in 1985, he was traveling between Ohio and Cape Coral, and his mother co-owned a lounge where Rose had been seen. So who killed Rose Marie Gayhart? Was it the boyfriend who did not want the baby, or the serial killer who was in the same town at the same time? 40 years later, the question is finally being asked out loud. And her family, her parents, now in their late 70s, and her sister are still waiting for one thing. Not just a name. Justice. Rose was 23. She was pregnant. She wanted to keep her baby, and she never got the chance. Rose Marie Gayhart's case is open, and if this story moved you, share it. Every share puts her name and the question of who killed her in front of one more person who might know something. Which theory do you believe, the boyfriend or the serial killer? Drop it in the comments and subscribe. There's another cold case waiting, and you don't want to miss it.